explicitly. And so you get a series of discussions, brief discussions, in Roman literature about the women who have occasionally spoken out. And you then found how they are described. And so they're described as freaks, as half men. And there's what I find very interesting, because it actually, not wholly, but in part, matches our own experience, I think. You look through ancient literature to find where women do speak, and I'm not talking here about Greek tragedy, but I'm talking about the historical women, or pseudo-historical women. Women are allowed to speak in two particular areas. One is just before they die, right? So, female Christian martyrs are allowed to speak. They give before the lions come, they speak. And so, in the famous story of the rape of Lucretia in Roman myth history, the start of the Roman Republic, when a relative of the Roman king rapes the virtuous woman Lucretia, which then starts the process of throwing the kings out. Lucretia is allowed to speak before she kills herself. So, in a sense, the first kind of sign of this is that women's speech has this moment, but it goes nowhere. They don't learn to speak because they're going to be dead. This is their one chance. The other area in which women speak, I think, is something that does match up with 21st century allowances to women. And that's, women are allowed to speak to support the interests of women. So, in one of the examples that one of my Roman historians uses, with slightly more acceptance than the others, is when a famous woman, the daughter of an even more famous orator, comes into the forum and speaks on behalf of the women of Rome who have just had a special super tax imposed on them. And so she objects to the tax on women. Now, here it's clear that women can, as it were, make public representation if it's on behalf of women. And I think that we find that actually very commonly in modern debate. I mean, that's to say, women, well, just look at the jobs women hold in parliaments. Women can be ministers of health. They're much more rarely ministers of finance. And I was talking to somebody this afternoon, a journalist this afternoon, about getting women to write comment pieces in newspapers, when actually both newspapers want, and women, she said, prefer to, write op-ed pieces about women's issues. So it's all right to get up there and speak to defend women's rights, but you can't talk about war, politics, finance, and boys' stuff. You can talk sectionally in the interests of women, but not on behalf of the whole community. And I found that very striking when I was preparing this book. There are a few websites, you'll be not surprised to know, which call themselves like 100 great speeches by women. They do, I have to say, find it quite hard to get to do 100 great speeches. Almost all of them are on women's issues. They're about health, education, reproductive capacity, abortion, standing up for the rights of the child. So it is quite interesting that we also, in part, have inherited that sense that women can speak about women, just don't let them speak about men.
De fet, vostè una mica, arrel d'això, es planteja també una reformulació del poder, de què és el poder, de la imatge que en tenim i del que ha de ser. Vostè diu, efectivament, quan les dones estan representades, és veritat que s'assegura d'alguna manera que alguns temes considerats, entre cometes, femenins, i que hauríem de deixar de considerar femenins, seran debatuts, seran parlats, però hem d'anar molt més enllà d'això. Per què és important que les dones estiguin representades? Aprofitem el seu coneixement, la seva experiència, que estan quedant tan al marge.
I think it's the idea of listening to women, or allowing women to be heard, or allowing women to be taken seriously, is part of a bigger issue of power. And I think that you can see some of the ideas that I think we all instantly recognise about women's voices, like, for example, I'm not now talking about the ancient world, but I'm talking about somebody like Margaret Thatcher. When she became Prime Minister, she was trained to speak lower, right? Because lower, deep voices mean authority. Well, what they really mean is you sound like a man, right? And many modern European politicians, and I'd be interested, I think, to know how this applied in, for example, the Indian subcontinent, with people like Mrs. Gandhi, to go back a while. I'm not sure it's the same there. But in Western Europe and America, there is a tendency for female politicians to dress like men. There's the kind of the Angela Merkel trouser suit, which is worn by Angela Merkel, Hillary Clinton, Nicola Sturgeon, usually in something like dark blue, and it's a trouser suit which is quite aggressively male. So you see all those issues about how women intersect with power, connects, I think, to their voice, but goes more widely into decision making. And when I was writing these lectures, one thing I was always saying to myself was, okay, so what's the answer? It's all very well to write a couple of hours worth of talk explaining why women are excluded, but what do we do to include them? And if, as Anna says, we want to include women in power structure because A, it's unfair not to, and they lose out. It's also unfair on the rest of us because women are good, and why lose out on their expertise? So we want that to be the case. How do we move from this world where you have a few half men, half women female figures, so I suppose I'd put myself into that category a bit, managing to do it, but actually not part of any sort of major structure. And that, I think, is really hard. And I'm sure there are many women here who, like me, had all kinds of discussions at work, in seminars, in classes, about how women can get their voices heard more. Maybe if only you chose the right moment to intervene, you get a better response. Maybe your questions are stupid anyway, and all the kind of things we ask ourselves. And none of it ever gets anywhere. It makes you feel better, but it doesn't get anywhere. And I suppose that I came to the conclusion, I don't think this is a particularly immediately practical suggestion, but I came to the conclusion that ultimately you have to accept that the way we think about power, the way we talk about it, the way we believe it operates, is something that goes back throughout the whole culture of the West, and it is gendered male. You close your eyes and think of a powerful person, And I can almost guarantee that even the most paid-up feminist like me doesn't